What is up, mofos? JJ back here from RunPureBets. Talk a little preview show, July the 31st. I'll touch briefly on the games, some betting markets I think that are very targetable moving forward. Also, maybe even talk on the Marlins excessive salami slapping, which, look, inevitably it could cause the league to shut down. What was I going to say? I know that you just heard the background noise. It's been a while since I've gone live solo, right? It's good to be back. I hope you all remember protocol. I don't see anybody checking in here. What's up, Julian? You guys should know protocol by now. Full name as you enter the video, full name, social security number, non-erect dick size should all be being typed in. Not really seeing anything in the chat right now relative to those three things. As you all know, it's just for research purposes. I'm sure you all understand. So also, what are you guys drinking tonight? Anything? I know that some of you have your alpha shit, right? But here's me right here. Gaze wine cocktail. I know some of you are probably like, wow, what a pussy, right? I only drink beer because my dick's 12 inches. Well, chill, all right? The real alphas drink this shit. If I go to a party and see some dude drinking Gaze wine cocktail, like I just assume his dick clanks between his knees. Okay, so anyway, tonight's slate. Would you guys prefer to just ask some questions on it? Anything you want to target? I could just go by game briefly as well, just to keep it all positive. See, at least Max comes in, drops the information. What's up, Freddie? Overtime. So Julian, I'll be live for about 30 minutes right before slate starts. What was I going to say? Okay, so I guess without further ado, so I'll talk on some betting markets before I dive into the slate. Now, you guys may have seen, and I've actually noticed it myself. I'm not sure if you guys have seen it too. Teams first road travel, okay? And it seems like a lot of the market is betting these games under, okay? Team first travels on the road. Maybe you talk about them being sluggish, maybe, right? We've seen it a little bit early on, right? But I think like the market's kind of starting to overreact a bit here. Seeing a lot of under money come in tonight, especially on the game that I like. The Padres Rockies, like I feel like that total in a normal circumstance would be probably 12 or over. Tonight it's 11.5. Seemingly there's so much under money coming in. It looks like it might even push down to 11. You're talking two teams that are really swinging the bats really well, and they're going into Coors in a warm night in Coors. Like to me, and I get it. Like Richards isn't bad, obviously. Gray is hit and miss, but like man, I mean that just feels so low. But look, we'll see. Ultimately, I do think that. Leverage the market to your best advantage in that regard. Notice that, as teams travel more and more or get more accustomed to this new league travel, it does appear like they've been a little sluggish, right? But the market will either react normally or it will overreact to that. So just realize that maybe you can start targeting some overs late if that becomes the case. What's up, Sakrathar? Ron, Chad, Justice. Now, White Sox Royals. So Justice asks on the White Sox Royals, what we got for that game? Let me just confirm here. So, looks like, what is it, Bubik versus Keuchel. White Sox open 155, down to 140. Is that right? Or did they open 140 up to 155? Let me just confirm here. White Sox open 140 up to 155. So I know there's been a lot of like targets on these games. Like I, for one, personally feel like, how do you lay that? How do you ever lay that price with the White Sox? Like I don't care what the matchup is. How do you ever lay that price with the White Sox? Now I get it. The Royals have been bad. But, man, that just feels like such a huge price on the road. I know that, not true road games, right? No fans, but that just seems so big. But I'll tell you what, like, for me, it's tough to back the Royals just in general, right? But if you were going to do it, I just don't see how you could lay that type of vig with the White Sox. In small samples, right, anything could happen, but that's a fat price for them. So not really going to be a spot I really target on either way, and the total's a little inflated. Something I want to mention as well, guys, like, because I know you're seeing a lot more inflated totals, right? Because you get your DH in the National League, right? And just overall, there's been a lot more runs because it's been hot. Something to always keep in mind, and I mentioned this from time to time, like, have yourself capped at totals at parks. And I say that because, like, you'll look at a park, right? And you'll just look at two shitty pitchers, and you'll be like, oh, definitely easy over. You don't even care what the number is, right? Like, you don't even look at what the number is. You're like, oh, two shit cans throwing on the hill tonight or today. Easy over. I'm not even going to think twice about it. But, like, create yourself a spectrum for each park because park is a big factor, right? In totals, of course it is, right? Coors has its own element, right? And then a field like San Francisco's has its own element, right? both in inverse directions. You have to cap yourself at certain numbers for certain parks that you just won't bet. Like, for instance, maybe hypothetically, it's that you'll never bet an under at Coors that's less than like 8 or 8.5, right? Because you'd be silly to, even if it was like Scherzer and Bieber, or I mean, obviously it wouldn't happen at Coors, but you get what I'm saying. Like, you wouldn't, even if you had two aces, you probably wouldn't want to bet an under at that rate, at that price, at that number at Coors. Same thing. Maybe you won't bet an over at Coors that's over 15.5. I know last year we were seeing a bunch of 16.5, 17, right? But give yourself that little spectrum per park, because otherwise you kind of get lost in the totals, right? Because you'll just kind of like blindly assume 2 bad pitchers, I'll bet over, 2 good pitchers, I'll bet under, right? But make sure you're considering the park, because look, a lot of parks add base hits, remove base hits, just based on the dimensions of it, right? And certain parks play to better pitchers, certain parks play to better hitters. So always keep that in mind and keep yourself capped at a number for certain parks that you will and won't bet unders or overs with. Just something to keep in mind. Why are the Angels so sorry? Well, I'll tell you this much: like, the Angels are off to a pretty poor start, and I'd have to think it's more the pitching than anything. But it's so early, right, that it's hard to really say, like, is it the teams having a cold start, or have they just run into teams that are playing very hot, right? I know it's like, oh, well, they're losing, so of course they're just naturally cold. But it does beg the question for you, right? Like, is there truly enough of a sample size right now to really say that a team is starting off shitty or bad or poor, or cold, right? Or in the same spectrum, is there enough of a sample right now to say that a team is starting out very hot or, very good or very strong? I don't look at it. I'm not going to overreact to numbers I've seen after 7 or 8 games. I'm staying to my means. I've been big on the Padres this year coming in. I'm just going to kind of continue to try to ride that train. They're just a team that all around just has a lot of completeness to them. Great lineup up and down, great bullpen, above average starting staff. I would say the starting staff is probably the worst of the 3, but that's kind of a backhanded compliment per se, because their bullpen's like top notch and their lineup is, definitely, one of the top notches in the National League, from top to bottom at least. So, Padres are a team I've been hot on. I'm not, even if they started poorly, I wasn't going to be like, oh, now I'm going to be low on the Padres, right? I'm not letting a small sample size dictate the way I bet, the future games, right? Interesting series here. This will be a fun one, right? They go into Coors. Colorado's been a nice little pleasant surprise recently. I think that ultimately, you have a market. Tonight's an interesting spot for me, because I think you have a market that I look at that price and, man, is that a cheap price on the Padres? Because you have the Rockies, who people were betting against with Oakland basically blindly every game, for the most part, right? Not everyone, but for the most part. And now they come back home to face a really hot swinging team. And it just feels like that line's too low. I mean, you're getting a better pitcher tonight. You're getting a better lineup. You're getting a better bullpen, all for minus 105. But ultimately, I do like the Padres to throw on some runs tonight regardless. So let me see. See if I know I caught some questions. Jumped on under 5.5. Royals game last night. Hell of a week thanks, Kim. It's been a good week for us overall. So Sakrathar likes the Rangers money line tonight, minus 125. I'll tell you this, I love the fact that you're calling that game as the line's gone down, right? Because ultimately line opens 155. Now it's kind of like 120. I'm even seeing some 117. Something to keep in mind, there's so many people that bet games late, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with betting games right before they go off, right? But always realize there is something wrong if you're betting games right before they start that are 30 cents off from open, 20 cents off from open, 40 cents off from open, or a total, right? Where you're getting a full run in the other direction, right? That's just not going to be ideal for you long term, So ultimately, and I know a lot of you guys will, whatever it is, log into your sports books or go home from a full day of work and log into your books and make a few bets right before. So you kind of it almost becomes invisible to you, right? The fact that you lost 30 cents here, lost 20 cents here, lost 40 cents. So what I'm talking with the line is line opens minus 120, right? Night before, 24 hours before, whatever. Now it's minus 160. You log in, you just bet 160 without even knowing that the line was actually 40 cents cheaper the day before. And again, in small samples, it's probably not going to mean all that much, right? Maybe 1 or 2 games, 10 games won't mean that much. But man, multiply that by 100 games, 200-300 games over the course of a season, 1,000 games over the course of a year. Just a lot of free money you're giving away. So just something to keep in mind. What's up, Alex? What's up, Zorak? Space Guard, Ron. Do you think the MLB season gets canceled? I think there's too much money in it to be canceled. I know that the horny Marlins definitely aren't helping the cause, but overall, like the league as a whole hasn't seen too many COVID outbreaks aside from the Marlins. So like if you remove the Marlins from the equation, the whole league itself hasn't really seen all that much. Very low percentage anyway. So I just think you have a situation where, I mean, just relegate the Marlins. Like, I mean, I know it sounds silly, but like, man, like if you figure out a way that it makes sense where you can kind of like, the problem that Major League Baseball has is that you have very limited time to make these games up, right? So I know that they're talking about these 7-inning doubleheaders, right? But it seems so forced to do that, right? Like, I mean, it could work, right? I mean, you could have the Marlins play like, whatever it is, 15 games in 10 days if you shorten them to 7 innings, but it's just still a lot. It's still a lot, and the longer this goes on, So ultimately, what MLB wanted to avoid was this from happening, and it did happen. But I think that they're doing the right thing now. With it, like as long as you quarantine the Marlins, like this can't happen again, is what I'm getting at. Like you can't have multiple teams have this happen. Like you can get away with it with one team, especially if the team is a bad team like the Marlins. I mean, I tell you what, this might have been a different story if this was like the Yankees, right? Or if this was like the Dodgers, this would have been a different story. But it's the Marlins, a team that wasn't projected to be all that big coming into the year. So I do believe that they have a little more leniency there, but you can't. You got to figure out a way to make it work. But again, the Marlins kind of going rogue, seemingly in some clubs right before the season is kind of screwed up. But it is what it is, and I think the baseball will do the right thing that they can anyway. I mean, I know that the right thing will depend who you ask, right? But I think overall they're probably going to continue the season. But this can't happen again. Like it can't. This can't happen to another team because then they're going to be in a situation where they're probably going to have to cancel. I hope I haven't missed your opinion on San Diego. So I briefly touched on it already, Space Guard. Basically, the thought process there is you're looking at you get two teams with two hot bats coming into cores. Like for me, it's almost like an auto over at 11.5. But there is the argument of teams traveling and they've been sluggish since the long layoff. Now you start traveling overnight to another stadium. There's been a little bit of lag there with the bats for some teams that have already started doing it. So, but ultimately, for me, I don't. It's tough. It's tough overall, right? Because the Rockies have hot bats too, so it's tough for me to really love the Padres in this spot. But it is a cheap price. But I do believe the Padres will score runs, so that's why I liked their team total tonight. What's up, Buzzer Beater? What's usually the highest vig you go with? So, Chad, I'll be honest. Like, I'll go up to -200 at times. I rarely do it, but I will. I typically only post though -135. I do that because like I don't want to come off touty, right? So I try to keep those limited. Like you'll never see me post parlays. I mean, if you do, it's like super, super rare. But -135 is typically my sticking point, especially with baseball, right? I even do the same thing in tennis. When I give tennis plays, like it's always 135. I mean, I can't even remember the last time I did a 140. I mean, maybe I gave a 140, but I can't remember the last time that happened. But I do that to keep your guys' bankrolls in check. Like I know that, sometimes you kind of lose yourself betting, a bunch of -160s, 170s, not realizing how good your actual win percentage needs to be betting those, right? The highest vig I typically will bet will be about -200, but again, what I'll give out, probably -135. So Chwadi asks, is there such a thing as too much Vaseline? I'll tell you what, this year early on, there certainly has not been too much Vaseline. You've seen it a bit. I know that it's going to happen regardless. It's inevitable. Like bullpens have really been imploding in some of these games. I know they've hurt me a bit. And I'm not talking like a bullpen imploding, giving up like 2 runs. Like, no, I'm talking like a 6 or 7 run outburst from a bullpen. It's kind of being like KBO, ish, right? But it is early, right? So there's no need to go crazy about it. But you're going to see me kind of target first fives a little bit more than I wanted to early on, just because I've been bitten a bit by bullpens. But I do believe over the course of a season, regardless, that's gonna kind of even itself out. Now, sure, maybe over a shortened season it won't, 60 games. But over a long season in Major League Baseball, that kind of evens itself out, right? If you're betting a bunch of games where like you're getting the good CLV, right, 20, 30 cents, whatever it is before the game, and the game starts out well, and you're sitting there in the 7th inning up 2 runs, and you lose that game, and then 3 days later, kind of similar scenario, and then you find yourself hoping that like some of the games now that you've gotten wrong in terms of like now you're sitting in the 7th inning down 2 runs, you're hoping you can kind of get bailed out in the opposite direction, and that doesn't happen. So then ultimately you kind of spiral out of control with your bankroll. But ultimately, the long story short, I know I'm kind of going on a tangent there, but long story short, like don't overthink it. Like it's going to happen. You're going to have games you should win that you lose, games that you should lose that you win. It's going to happen. It's all short samples, but over the long haul, always the goal is, good closing line value. And speaking of that, Closing line value. So some of the games today that have seen a lot of movement right before start, right? I mean, I'll say the last 3-4 hours. The Yankees line is pretty low. You know what's an interesting spot is like, the quote unquote sharp people are betting the Red Sox tonight, right? Because the majority of your public bets are on the Yankees, and the line's moved like 50 cents down. But man, the Yankees price right now is so juicy. I mean, you can get 175 with them at home against the Red Sox, who've kind of like have had their head up their ass this season. Like, I know that they've kind of squeezed a few games now against the Mets, but like, man, that is kind of wild to me that line's gone so south. That's an interesting line too. Like, it's gone so low that you can actually target the first 5 for like minus half a run. I got to figure that's at like minus 120 now, right? Like, I mean, Jesus, that probably opened first 5 minus a half run at like minus 160. So always look for that, right? Like, always look for those line spots where like the lines move so far that now you can rationalize betting the opposite side. Like, even if you like the side, you can rationalize now betting the opposite side just because of the line movement, right? I did this in front of you guys in the Seattle game the other night. Like, I didn't love Seattle in that spot, but man, a line moves 75 cents for a game. Like, I'm sorry, like, there's value on the other side. Like, I mean, it begs the question, right? Does a sports book really get a line 75 cents wrong at open? Okay, I'm sure it happens from time to time. I'm sure it does occasionally happen in major sports. Okay, but long term, how often does that really happen? Like, the Mariners, the Angels in that game open at like minus 180. They close at like minus 260, which now has the run line at dog money for the Mariners. Spots like that you want to look for, right, to target, because, and it's like I always say, like, somebody might say, oh, I love the Angels in this spot. And you might be right in this spot. This one spot, you might be right? Or maybe in the next spot, you might be right. But long term, how often do you truly think the odds makers are 75 cents wrong on a line? Okay, it's just not common. It's just not common. And I'm not telling you to blindly bet the opposite side when line moves 75 cents, but man, it's definitely something to at least look at, right? At least consider, right? And definitely don't be betting a team like the Angels late like that, 75 cents after movement. What do you think about Cleveland versus Minnesota? So I said yesterday, like, the play I liked yesterday, Dylan, was Cleveland mini under 4.5 first 5. It was fairly sweat-free, only a 2-run homer by Berrios. Very few runners even got to second base in that first 5. The game ends 2-0. I know that a lot of people are going to like Clevy tonight. Trying to confirm the line. So right now it's minus 114 down. So what you're going to have, and I think you saw a little bit of this yesterday, where it seemed like the public was, not the public, but at least the market, because the public, sharp square, whatever, but the actual market itself was big on Minnesota. I think the overall market is just saying to themselves, like, hey, look, I can get Minnesota at home with those heavy bats, and I get them at a cheap price. I don't care who's pitching against them. That lineup from top to bottom is deadly. So I can get them at that cheap price at home. It almost feels like people are just blindly betting them. And I could see it because of how good their lineup is. And there's a huge lineup edge from the Twins to the Indians. Look, Clevy's good. It's a tough spot for me to target based on these numbers. But that Clevy line is coming down enough where you could start to argue maybe it's favorable for Cleveland. But I would really like that number to be like minus. And of course, by the way, while we're doing this video, like, the Padres now moved to a favorite in the Rockies game. I think that whoever your betting market now at least is betting the Padres, shifting that line, which is going to impact our total, which I think why we got a good price in that team total, over 5.5. Mini has at least seen Clevenger a lot. Yeah, Troy, that's a good point. Like, I don't know how much BVP. I mean, I guess BVP matters. Like, it matters to a certain extent, right? But I mean, I don't know how much that really matters this year, like right now, right? Like, I mean, Clevy could be not this whole different pitcher, but like, he could have changed up a few things, right? I don't know if I buy too much into BVP long term. I know that it will work, of course, in short samples, but yeah, I mean, Clevy's no stranger to Minnesota, so you'd think Minnesota could jump on him. But either way, like, it's just not a spot I like. I mean, total's what, 9. So yeah, it's not a spot I like. It's a low total. At minimum, one really good arm. Just not a spot overall I'm on. Now I'll tell you this, like, for instance, look at the Cincinnati-Detroit game, right? Get line moves 30 cents, right? It's basically about to close at 180. Okay. If you were going to bet Cincinnati, how can you rationalize right now betting Cincinnati? Like, you're logging into your sportsbook app, you see Cincinnati, Castillo, Detroit sucks, I'll bet Castillo, right? But like, logistically speaking, long-term sports betting, trying to be profitable, how can you bet Castillo right now for the Reds? Now, he could win. They could win 20. Look, they could win 27-0 tonight. 27-0, like shatter an MLB record for most runs scored. Maybe they score 40 runs. Okay, either way. Long-term speaking, it doesn't make sense to be making those types of bets right before the games start. It just doesn't. Okay, I know it's kind of sound like a broken record with that, but there's such a numbers angle to betting sports in terms of finding value. Okay, grabbing good spots. Okay, trying to predict where the market's going to go with a number. Like you'll see me often. Like I'm not going to always get the market right. Like it's not always going to be right. But you'll see I'm right far more often than I'm wrong. So I'll pick a number early that I think we're getting a good number on, and then sometimes I'll even give you guys a number late after it's shifted a lot, getting the good number on. So ultimately, always consider that. Like when you're in your handicapping process, consider the market, right? Because in small samples, cash is king. Wins and losses, of course, matter. But like how you're predicting the market long term really matters. Really matters. What's up, Joey? Are you always this calm during games, or are you screaming and throwing your shit at the end? So Kenneth, I'll tell you, like I'm probably one of the most calm guys you'll see watching a game. And you saw too, like I don't know if you guys are watching the videos I did with the NASCAR videos that I did with the keg, but like I won a little over I think 15,000 or 16,000 on a live video with the Sports Keg in DFS, right? And you could watch the video. I think it's like probably like 2-3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, whatever it was. Yeah, I mean, calm as a cucumber. It's not that I don't want to jump up and cheer, but like for me, it's the losses hurt, the wins are nice, right? But you got to kind of try to remove emotions from sports betting long term, because otherwise you become a train wreck, right? You'll lose sleep. You'll kick yourself for doing X, Y, Z. And don't ever be afraid. Like if you're on a real tilter, like a real cooler, like just withdraw all your money from your sports books, right? Give yourself a clean refresh. Take a few days off. Look, sports betting's fun. It's always good to get the juices flowing, the blood flowing, especially if that blood's moving towards like your cock. But at the end of the day, like you need to be able to, truly, at least at minimum, separate the emotions from it, because you're just going to be screwed long term, and you'll just constantly be, tilted. Even when you win, you'll be tilted. Like, so ultimately, I'm pretty calm. With that said, like if like I get a bad break, yeah, sure, I'll give like one, like, oh, you got to be fucking kidding me, one of those. But like, for the most part, pretty calm. Live to fight another day. And it's all about bankroll management. If you working on your bankroll management, you're not going to find too many issues with your emotions, right? But that takes some practice, right? Almost like some mental training per se, right? So just parlay the Reds with the Yankees. So in one breath, Kenneth, I do like that because you're getting such a good price with the Yankees. The other breath is you're not really getting such a good price with the Reds. But ultimately, of course, that would be a popular parlay. But worth noting, like when you do that, right? I always advise, like if you're going to kind of quote unquote blindly do that, right? Like blindly parlay 2 minus 180 faves or, whatever. Because ultimately that plays a little over 1-to-1, like 1.2 to 1, 1.3 to 1, whatever. Bet the opposite sides. Like instead of needing two teams to win, you only need one to win, right? If one wins, you will pick up so you're betting, in this case, you would be betting what? I'm not saying in this sample do it, but I'm just saying give yourself a little heads up to look for it more often, right? So you see right now, what do you got? Yankees, you got Red Sox plus 160, and you got Tigers plus, basically they're both plus 160, right? So think about this for a second. If one of those two teams wins, you pick up 60 cents, right? You pick up 60 cents if one of them wins, okay? Whereas you need both teams to win to really pick up basically 1 unit. So I always say, like, make sure, at least you're considering betting both dogs 1 unit each instead of parlaying 2 big favorites. Just because if you're talking expected value long-term, that's a better way to do it. Okay. I know it's not a comfortable way to do it because you're always going to kick yourself like, oh, look, now I'm holding tickets like a D-bag for the Tigers and the Red Sox. Like, oh, I feel like such an idiot. And then when they both lose by 12 runs, you'll be like, yep, I am an idiot. I should never bet these. But again, if you're talking expected value, it makes more sense to straight bet both dogs in those scenarios. Looks like the Trailblazers are kind of doing their thing. Hopefully spread can cash that one for us. Let me see. Great advice on not putting especially homer bets. I thought Braves too, but Mets need a win. So, and that's an interesting topic, right? Like, so Kenneth brings up, I thought the Braves too tonight, but the Mets need a win. Like, I can't stress this enough. Okay. So many people like try to, or at least attempt to handicap motivation. Okay. This is like, unless like you personally know all the players on one team. Like you literally, like you're in like some group chat with all of them and they're all like super pumped or like they're all like how do you know? Like, so a team loses 3 games in a row. People will be like, oh man, this team needs a win. Like let's grab that. They're gonna bounce back. They're gonna grab that 4th win. Well, why? Why can't you take that argument in the other direction? Like why can't you say, man, this team's lost 3 in a row. They are down in the dumps. Man, they're going to need something big to happen their way to kind of get the confidence back up. Like, why is it like always, and it's not always, like certain people are different, right? But for the most part, it's like, oh, this guy did this, he's got to bounce back. Or this team did this, they got to bounce back. Or this team needs to do X, Y, Z. Like they need to come out early hitting the ball. Or they need to, they're going to be ultra laser focused tonight. Like, truthfully speaking, like, it's just not true. Like, and again, you're more or less, you're indirectly handicapping motivation, right? Because you're more or less saying like, okay, so XYZ team is on a 3-game bender in a short season or 2-game bender, and now they need to now they're hosting a game or now they're going on the road to a game that's winnable. This is where they make their mark. This is where everybody knows that they. But why can't why can't they be super nervous now? Like why can't they be anxious? Like too anxious? Like oh man, or why can't they be kicking themselves, right? And it'll impact. Baseball's a big mental game, right? You see it all the time. Players go through these huge streaks, hot and cold, where you're like 1 minute you're like, man, it's like the guy swinging at a beach ball, and the next it's like, man, it's like he's swinging at a wiffle ball. Like it kind of goes up and down, like up and down, up and down, up and down. So for me, I always advise people like ride the streaks. Don't try to buck them. Okay, baseball's a timing sport, and when your timing is great, especially if you got a few guys in the lineup where the timing's great, ride that. Definitely ride that. And if teams are losing, don't assume they're just going to jump into a next series like guns blazing. They're going to bounce back. It's not going to. I don't say it's not going to happen. Of course, it could happen, but inevitably, like it's the opposite's not always going to be true. Like it's just not. So when you're handicapping, just do your best to just keep it analytical. Okay, don't get me wrong. You're going to have to constantly make good takes on certain directions, right? You're going to have to be overweight on certain things, right? That's always like you can't just rely on numbers purely to make your call it estimated guesses, right? You can't. But you can use numbers in the right fashion and use handicapping, call it narratives, and use your own process to kind of make yourself better in other aspects. But long term, like using numbers alone, or at least the majority of numbers specifically, should be your target. But again, not solely, but you definitely shouldn't be using narratives alone to make sports bets. Like that's just, you're begging to lose long term. But again, of course, short samples, maybe a dude wins 10 of 12, betting a team. Because he thinks they're doing something right, that the numbers don't make sense, but he thinks they're doing something right and they're winning 10 or 12. But ultimately, like I said, in short samples, don't get crazy. But again, I know I'm kind of rambling again, but I hope you're finding at least somewhat of this helpful. Did I miss anything in the chat? I know a bunch of people said some stuff. Math teachers had to hate you. So I don't think I missed any questions. Let me see. So I'll cover. I know I'm almost cutting at 7:00, and I really appreciate it. Thanks, guys, for popping in. I know I want to do a live show. I haven't done a live show solo in a while, and I'll try to do these at least once a week for us at RunPureBets. Some of that, most of the live shows probably will be, behind the paywall. But again, super cheap, right? Like, $60 a month, you get all my plays. And I'll be posting more. I know I've been only posting like 1 or 2 plays a day, but 100% I'll be posting more. I like to keep it slow early on because I know for a fact that like everybody like who watches posted content, like they'll over obsess about a record, right? They'll over obsess on units, right? So I know like if I come out of the gate guns blazing and I give you guys 3-4 plays a day and I start out 50% down 2 units, like you'll be like, oh, well, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? Now, granted, sure, I could have started 75%. I also could have started 35%, So I'm giving you guys a smaller sample of games that I feel more confident in. I think the record's now 8-4 with my stuff. So again, nothing crazy, but at the same time, it's all about keeping the discipline stuff. But once Monday, Tuesday comes around, I'll start switching to full unit plays, and I'll have 2 to 3 a day. So, you guys know you'll be good for that from me. And then of course you get all the live shows from the Keg, with all the talented handicappers there are there. And all the articles we'll have and podcasts and stuff. So for me, it's like $60. You get every sport, every major sport. And we'll try to crush this together. We're off to a good start, right? We're up like 10 units to start only in like 2.5 weeks, with limited content. Again, quality over, quantity for sure. Doesn't that shame weigh you down? How about some golf talk? So Space Guard, I'll tell you this, and I won't get too crazy with the golf talk. I know I'll wrap this video up in the next 5-10 minutes. Xander, right? My boy, at least for this tournament, right? What a comeback today. Okay, he absolutely shit canned. What was it, hole 12, where he goes 8 over a 4 over, but he shoots an 8 on it, and then kind of battles himself back, right? I just think that for the course, he just made a lot of sense to play consistent golf. Now I think he's tied in 22nd or 21st, and I truly don't believe he's playing his best golf. Not going to surprise me in the least. He makes a good run tomorrow. I might even make a play I might post a play in the RunPureBets if I see a matchup I like for Xander. He's done this a few times now where he's made a run on the third day of tournaments, especially tournaments where he's like sneaked into the cut. Now, granted, there's no cut making in this tournament, but he's made some good runs on the third day. So I'm interested to see who he gets matched up against tomorrow, because ultimately that's it's going to be big on our front. Hopefully, if you're here to cash our top 20. Just supplement does include Discord, or is that only on the Angel? There will be a Discord. We'll have it posted for you tomorrow. I'll post it on the Twitter for the betting Discord link. But yeah, for the betting ends, we will have a Discord where you can ping us. Me, Jay, Chwadi, Joey, Tyler, Spread. Ping us with any questions you have about bets. So for sure, there will be a betting Discord. Expect to have that live tomorrow, where we'll, as long as you're a member, you'll be in the Discord. So did I miss any more questions? The website needs a little tweaking. Yeah. Well, it's not the greatest, but ultimately there's some back end stuff that we're still trying to figure out, Rob. But the site should be fine moving forward. Now the other thing. So ultimately, I guess as a last note, I know that people typically like to chase some of the late games. I know the Rockies are an earlier one, so I'll briefly touch on some of the later games. I do believe that if you're going to touch the Texas-San Francisco game, even though the Rangers kind of seem at least a little more chalky than the Giants, that is a good price versus open with the Rangers. But the Rangers are just not hitting. Like overall, they're not hitting, right? So it's hard to bet on a team like that. But ultimately, I couldn't bet the Giants in that game, right? So ultimately, that's not a spot I'm going to be on. And then Arizona Dodgers again, right? Real cheap price with the Dodgers. Kind of very similar to what you're seeing with the Yankees tonight. But like for instance, I could never bet the Diamondbacks at that price, right? And I know that they're plus 116 right now, right, against the Dodgers. And I know that like your quote unquote sharp money is probably on the Diamondbacks, right? But ultimately, how could you bet the Diamondbacks plus 115 against the Dodgers? To me that's just silly. But ultimately, of course, it could hit tonight. But man, if you're going to touch that game, it's probably worth it to dabble a bit with the Dodgers, even though it seems very chalky. But if you are going to bet it, I think it's a little silly to bet the Diamondbacks. Let me see. And the last game that we have here looks like Oakland-Seattle. So Seattle's been quite a hot team recently, right? At least with their sticks. And and it's always tough to say, right? Have they been hot or have the Angels been cold? Because they come off that series, winning a few games. I'll tell you what, Oakland's been pretty good too, at least hitting wise. I know they dropped a few to Colorado. And I'll tell you what, the market just continues to back Oakland. Like for me, it's kind of crazy because normally when you see stuff like this, a team like Oakland drop a few games that they shouldn't, usually the market kind of begins to tail off. But it seems like the market's hitting Oakland harder than ever. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So if I was going to bet that game, it'd probably be like you're getting Seattle at home, so maybe run line with Seattle, maybe. Wouldn't be a spot I love because it's just hard to bet on the Mariners. Man, that is a tough team to bet. Their pitching is so bad. Their lineup is, half the guys like you never even heard of. So their lineup, they're a tough team to back. But the more that line climbs and climbs, like Oakland's just kind of not playing good baseball right now. Overall, they're hitting, but overall, the full spectrum, the bullpen, the bats, things just aren't clicking for that team. So interested to see how that game kind of plays out. But if I was to target it, probably be the run line. I took the Rockies only because they're at home. John Gray knows where he's playing. Richards is good though. So Space Card, like I said, I know I touched on it a little bit. For me, the Padres are just really working the sticks right now. They go into they play against the Giants where they just pile on runs all series, and that is a tough ballpark to string runs together in. And now they go to the hitter-friendly Coors Field on a 90-degree night. It just seems like they should be able to put up runs. But look, baseball's got a ton of variance to it, right? Wouldn't surprise either if they go cold. And John Gray, it's really hit and miss, right? So your quote unquote sexy pitcher, right? Your guy that can pile up some strikeouts, but man, can be a loose cannon at times. So fun game, should be a fun game to watch. Real interested to see it. But we'll see. I know spread grabbed the win with the Blazers, right? So a little 2-0 action between him and Big T to start. So now hopefully we get some MLB, and I know Big T posted some more plays over at the site. I'll put it here for those that don't know. Just RunPureBets.com. Everything's free up until tomorrow, so definitely feel free to check it out. Other than that, guys, look, I wish you all the best of luck tonight with all your plays, all your bets. There'll be a live show tomorrow night with Jay and the Keg for the MMA card. I'll be on that for the main event. So stay tuned for that. There'll be a lot of live bets given out as well, but we'll have pre-show bets for that card and pre-show and pre-bets for the MLB card and such on the sheets, probably by the latest tomorrow morning. But again, thanks so much, guys, for hanging out. I hope you found this video helpful, informative in one way or another. And again, hopefully the Marlins don't shut down the league because they can't keep their dicks in their pants, but we will see. But nonetheless, look, everybody, best of luck. Stay safe. Whoops. I don't know why that happened. Best of luck. Stay safe. And look, enjoy yourselves tonight. Right, guys? I'll see you tomorrow.